As someone who discovered Pink Floyd through Dark Side of the Moon, followed soon by Wish You Were Here, Metal, even Live at Pompeii, it's fascinating to go back to their first album, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, to hear where it all started. As I said in the last video, I'm not the biggest Syd Barrett fan.
Kill the monster!
Alright, I heard you all the first time. But as I said, there is something uniquely intriguing about Syd. His unconventional style would lay the groundwork for Pink Floyd to push the boundaries of rock and roll for years to come.
Maybe the music we play isn't directed at dancing necessarily like normal pop groups.
And you can hear it on Piper at the Gates of Dawn, named after a chapter from the book The Wind in the Willows. All these quirky psychedelic songs have a driving rhythm section, melodic keyboard textures, and all mostly centered around Syd's vocal, occasionally breaking for these elongated jams. Do I think it all works? No. I mean, let's be honest, Piper had some stiff competition in 1967. In fact, Pink Floyd was recording Piper in EMI studios at the same time the Beatles were recording Sgt. Pepper. They even stopped by to visit each other's sessions. But Piper is still such a time capsule for that summer of love, and some of it still really holds up. When you look at this cover, you get a pretty good idea of what music awaits inside. It was conceived before Hipgnosis's involvement by Vic Singh. He used a prism lens photographing the band, actually provided to him by George Harrison of all people. And it actually kicks off with the first Syd Barrett song I ever heard, Astronomy Domine, a truly epic number. I love that it starts with the radio sound effect provided by manager Peter Jenner, much like a NASA station. This would be the first in a long line of unconventional ways to open their records. There's a lot of signature Syd Barrett elements to be found here. That heavy guitar line that kicks off the song, the quirky harmonized vocals, and the very flowing lyrics.
Floating down, the sound resounds around the icy waters underground.
They almost sound stream of conscious, but full of psychedelic wonder. Unique vocabulary, too. This was really one of Syd's strengths as a writer. It kind of took me a while to get into Syd's guitar playing. When I first heard it, I was trying to learn every note from David Gilmour's melodic solo on Shine On You Crazy Diamond, and suddenly I'm hearing... Later on, though, I grew to appreciate it. These raw, heavy guitar parts echo back to rock and roll pioneers like Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley, and, despite Floyd's later commercial status, would be a huge influence on the punk movement, even the grunge movement. Though as I said before, you can't discredit the contributions everyone is bringing here. Nick Mason's tom-heavy drumming sounds like a lead instrument in and of itself. Astronomy Domine is layered with vocals from Syd and Rick. The final vamp where Syd sings Lime and Limpid Greed on his own and repeats the lines with Rick harmonizing is a perfect ending to this space odyssey. This is also a great sounding track, at least for 1967. I mean, if you're listening to the stereo version, you're gonna hear the drums coming out of one side and the bass coming out of another, but producer Norman Smith, otherwise known for engineering the Beatles' Rubber Soul, set out to recreate their live sound and did pretty well considering psychedelic music wasn't really his forte. Astronomy Domine is just the right balance, showcasing Pink Floyd's sonic power, wild improvisation, with just enough pop flavor to make it accessible to general audiences. It's a true classic that would stay in their live set for years, even be played on their last tour in the 90s. But what about the rest of the album? Well, Lucifer Sam, written about Syd's cat, though also kind of a play on words when he says be a hip cat, really feels like proto-punk with that sinister surf rock guitar line. I like this one too, especially Roger's bowed bass solo adding to the ominous vibe. Rick gets a chance to sing co-lead on the next song, the whimsical Matilda Mother, him playing the mother while Syd plays the child. I have to say, I do prefer Rick's voice. He's got such a distinct timbre, maybe not technically the best, but there's something very revealing in the way he approaches his vocals. And it certainly helps when you have some great melodies to sing like he does on Matilda, and I especially love the heavy bridge where Rick solos in that altered Phrygian scale, which we'll hear again later on, though the quality of the recording feels like it takes a massive step down, most likely due to bouncing tracks multiple times as they were still recording on 4-track tape machines. Same with Flaming, and no, it's not what you think it's about. This was actually released as their third single and has that child song melody to it.
Yippee, you can't see me, but
Unicorns, buttercups, although there's the lyric, "Here we go ever so high." Yeah, I think you can decipher the meaning of that yourself. Then we come to one of their more avant-garde tracks, and the first non-verbal one. Just watch. Gotta love Roger's dolphin noises. Pow R Toc H is definitely one that evolved from their live sets, where it was so terribly loud.
Why has it all got to be so terribly loud?
I mean, that's the way we like it.
The first side kind of fizzles out with Roger Waters' first credit, "Take up thy stethoscope and walk." Well, he had to start somewhere. Maybe he'll get better. Honestly, I'd say the first side is fairly solid, but we do have to flip the record over. One of the criticisms at the time was that this album didn't really capture the experience of seeing a Pink Floyd concert, where they relied much heavier on improvisational material. This was pretty common in the 60s, hence why bands like Cream and The Who recorded their concerts proper on albums like Wheels of Fire and Live at Leeds, respectively. Unfortunately, there's a limited amount of live Pink Floyd material from 1967. Even the officially released Live at Stockholm doesn't have audible vocals, but it does feature a live version of Interstellar Overdrive, long considered an essential listen of the Syd Barrett Pink Floyd era. And I kind of see what they mean. This tune was made for the stage, with light shows, dancing while high on acid. But listening to it now on vinyl, and probably given the limitations they felt in the studio, it honestly doesn't really interest me and sounds kinda dated. I mean, I don't want to keep comparing them to Cream. Syd couldn't play like Eric Clapton, and Roger was no Jack Bruce. But I can see what Nick Mason means when he says in his book that they just hadn't put in the hours yet. They would eventually start to develop a dynamic jam sound of their own, but this would be without Syd. So Interstellar Overdrive is really the only time capsule we have of this. And unfortunately, as side 2 continues, my interest starts to wane. There's just too many of these short, whimsical tunes that I just can't get into. It doesn't feel like Syd is all that invested in these 3-minute pop numbers they demanded from him either. And some of the lyrics are really trite. Scarecrow especially sounds almost unfinished. And then we come to the final song of the album, Bike. Another signature Syd tune with admittedly flowing lyrics at the top, but as it gets going, it sounds to me like Syd didn't quite have the melody or rhythm worked out yet, or maybe he was purposely trying to make it sound this way. Either way, it sounds like it gets kinda old after a while. At least until the end, with the sounds of looping duck calls to play us out. I keep hoping that I'll re-listen to Piper at the Gates of Dawn and it'll finally click with me, joining my other favorite Pink Floyd albums. I even bought it on vinyl so I could have that authentic experience. It is wildly innovative and a great time capsule of the psychedelic 60s summer of love. The first 3 songs I love listening to, but there's just too many I want to skip and other jammy songs that really should have been recorded live on stage. I have to emphasize, if you are a Syd Barrett fan, Piper at the Gates of Dawn is required listening. And even if you're obsessed with Dark Side of the Moon or The Wall, it's best to check out Piper just to see where it all came from. But for rating purposes, I am going to have to give Piper at the Gates of Dawn a spotted fish. And since this isn't a concept album, checking it out on a streaming service first isn't so blasphemous. The essential track is Astronomy Domine. Definitely give that one a spin. I also like Lucifer Sam and Matilda Mother, and I'd say if you really want to get a sense of the raw Barrett-era Pink Floyd jams, listen to Interstellar Overdrive. So, not a bad way to start off this series. Unfortunately, things are going to get worse before they can get better. I'll see you in the next one.